Hey, what's up, players? It's time for another video in our series, Pop, 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 another server drop. And today, we're going to be going over Agent Sudo from the TryHackme webpage. That already kind of gives you a hint by that name alone that this is going to be a Linux machine of some sort. And the sudo privilege will probably be taken advantage of more than likely. And just to get it out of the way at the very beginning, sudo is, for those that deal mainly on Windows sort of things, that's kind of like your run as admin almost, right? It's saying, I'm going to give this guy the ability to run a particular command or all commands as root, right? And root being the top level in Linux, right? That's your main goal here, your God mode, as it were. So that's what we're going to be trying to do today with this particular walkthrough. Some of the things we'll go over will be some brute forcing, some SSH, some privilege escalation, all kinds of cool stuff. And let's get popping, baby. All right, so on this one here, we see that this one has given us a IP address right there. And ahead of time, I went ahead and did my Nmap scan because sometimes it takes a little bit longer, but let me go ahead and explain it for a second. So over here, we're using Nmap. For those that aren't familiar with Nmap, it scans scans ports. And on a machine, you have 65,535 ports that you can be used, both TCP and UDP. These would be related to ones that are going to be ports that are a way for me to get in as an attacker or possibly exploit, depending on what's running on that particular port. The ones that we see here on this particular scan are because I didn't specify any specific port range. So by default, Nmap is going to do the first 1,000 top ports, if I'm not mistaken, and that being the well-known ports, because there's 0 through 1023 from that 65,000 some odd pool is going to be what they call well-known ports. In this case here being things like FTP, SSH, HTTP, things where you don't actually have to put the port number in a browser to go to it. So if I went to a web page that was being hosted on port 80, I don't have to type in the name of the address or the IP address _80 because it's a well-known port. After the 1024 and up, it's going to be what they call I forgot the fancy name they give it, but anyways, it's going to be ones that are registered ports. In other words, like an Apple or a or Unix or Citrix or something like that will actually say, listen, we have a product or software, and we want to reserve this port for usage whenever that software is being used on a computer. So that's going to be there until about, I'm going to say maybe 49,000-ish port range. And then when it gets up to that range, all the way up to 65,535, those are going to be what they call the dynamic ports, which are going to be ones that are opened on the fly, usually from the client to one of these services. So if I'm connecting from my machine to a server that's running on port 80, my computer will open up a randomly dynamic port within that range, go into that machine. So now that we get that out of the way, Nmap is a tool that most people use to be able to scan ports and look for any type of open ports. Now you can add some different switches. By switches, I mean the dash parameters that go along with the command. And when I say switches, I'll say TAC usually. So if I say TAC, Nmap TAC N means disable DNS resolution, because I don't need to know that because I'm just using an IP address here. So hopefully it speeds it up a little bit. The TAC capital PN, and it is case sensitive here. This one is to say don't do any pinging, because there's a lot of times the Nmap scan may not go through because the opposite side is disabling ICMP or any type of pinging capability. So it's saying skip all that. The TAC S capital V is for version, and what it does is it has a list. Nmap has a list that it compares of different fingerprints for whenever I poke and prod at that service that's running on there. If it results in any of these fingerprints in its response, then Nmap can, with good confidence, say, all right, this is FSTPD 3.0.3. So it won't just tell me, okay, you got FTP running here. It's going to try to tell me with good confidence what version is on there, because we need that whenever we want to go to a site like ExploitDB and find an exploit for it, for that specific version. The S capital C is for script, default script category. So Nmap has the capability of being extended into an exploitation tool as well by using scripts. And the extension would be .nse. And there's sections that they give it because some of the scripts can be pretty intrusive and they could actually disable or hurt, or I'm sorry, not hurt, disable or denial of service a server. And we may not want to do that in the scope of what we're doing for testing. So there are some categories that are safe or intrusive, but then there's also some categories where you're run-of-the-mill scripts like looking for HTTP methods, looking for HTTP title, things like that. Very common ones that we see that are safe, those are put into a category called default. And what the SC does is it just uses all of those particular ones. So for instance, this SSH host key that you see right here, that is one of the default scripts. Same with these two right here. Okay, so instead of me individually putting all these in there, I just say blast this whole category whenever I do it. And this, of course, would be the IP address. So here we see we have FTP open, we have port 22 open, and we have port 80. So in this case, because they have port 80, one of the first things I would probably do is visit the web page and see what is on there. So let me go over here and grab the IP address. And let's see what can be found on the web page. All right, dear agents, use your own code name as user agent to access a site from agent R. Okay, so a user agent, if you're not familiar with, is whenever I send a request to another machine, it will actually have a header. There's different HTTP headers, and to better explain it, I'm going to show you this tool called Burpsuite. So if you're using Kali Linux, you can bring up Burpsuite. And it's got the free edition, so it can do quite a bit of things. It can't do scanning or anything, but it can do quite a few things. If you look at here at the proxy tab, right here, you'll see under options that there's an address listed right here called a proxy listener. Now, if this is set, for instance, here 127.0.0.1:8080, this is the proxy that Burp will be listening on. So therefore, you would then go to your browser of choice, in this case here being Firefox for me, and go to Preferences, and on the very first General tab, let's scroll down, and right here on the bottom where it says Network Settings, if you click Settings, you would select this one. Remember though that it's normally defaulted to use System Proxy Settings. The reason I say that is a lot of times I forget to take it off of this when I'm done doing my hacking business. And if I just want to do regular browsing, I need to bring it back to this, or it's going to say the proxy refusing connection. So there you put in the 127.0.0.1, which is called a local host address, okay, representing your NIC card on this. And then port 8080, and I use that for all different things like FTP, HTTPS, everything like that. I don't usually worry about anything down here. This is how I set mine up. I hit OK. So now what's happening is when I go to ask for a page, in this case like this one, this 127.0 whatever, when I ask for a page, instead of going directly to the server to get my response, it'll actually go to Burpsuite first, and there I can tinker with it. I can do what I want with the request, and then send it on to the server. So I'm kind of in the middle, a man in the middle, if you will. So Burpsuite, because I've been just kind of browsing around at the beginning of this, I can see like right here, okay, that one right there is the actual address that I just visited. So this one here would actually be shown under proxy. And if you go to HTTP history, you can see it's listed in here right down, somewhere down here. Let me see here. Right there. So that was my request I just did for this page right here, okay? So when I send a request over here on the left, typically you have get and post. Get means give me what's on this web page content and display it back to me in my browser. Post would be if you're submitting something like maybe a username and password field or something to that effect. And then over here we see the response back from that particular server. Now on the client side, sending to that, we have some different headers that are listed over here. Okay. Now on a post request, you'll see another section down here where all of that, like where it says line 10 right down here, all that will be the body of the request. For get, there is none. There's no parameters, and there's nothing I'm sending, really. It's just me asking for a web page. So in this case here, I can see there is a header called user-agent:. And it's basically saying the header in this case here is telling the server that I am coming from a Mozilla Firefox, a Firefox browser. Now, there's other user agents for Android phones or for iPhones or for Safari or for Chrome. So it kind of lets the web page know who's asking this request, because sometimes there's content on there that may not render properly on different browsers, like maybe Opera or something like that, and it will have a check and it will disallow viewing the page based on the browser that's trying to ask for the page. And that's why they would use a user agent field in this case here for that. So what they're telling me is that the user agent field, if I look back here, it's saying use your own code name as the user agent. So in other words, none of this nonsense here, none of this Mozilla, blah, 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 whatever, but my own code name. Now, I don't know what my own code name is, but I'm assuming by this, Agent R, I'm assuming it's a single letter in the alphabet. So in Burp, you can do an automated, what they call intruder on this sort of thing to try to see what happens with it. So what you would do in this case is you have the GET request right here. I'm going to right click inside, anywhere inside of this request, and I'm going to say send to intruder. And up here in the top, you'll see this lights up, okay? I'm going to go over here to the positions tab, second tab, and over here you can actually pick something out of here to highlight as a placeholder. And what it will do is that you can add a payload word list and have it send request, insert in the contents of that payloads list into that section that you've highlighted. So I'm going to try to say A through Z instead of actually doing it manually. I want to put A through Z here in this field. So I'm going to highlight the value of this field, not the header, and I'm going to click add, and it puts a little squiggly lines here at the beginning and at the end telling me that's the position I want. I'm going to go then, by the way, don't worry about this right now. I'm going to do another video on the different modes for Burpsuite, but this will be fine for what we're trying to do. So under payloads, it says payload type, simple list, right? In this case here, you can find if there's, usually there's one that's, I don't know the exact name of the one for it. And you're probably thinking, well, if you're going to enter the letters in now anyways, why didn't you just do that in your browser? Well, it's because I want to show you how to do this. Because there are, by the way, if you get the Pro version, there are already pre-populated word lists such as an alphabet, uppercase, lowercase, all that kind of stuff already there for you. So what I'm going to do in this case here is I'm going to capitalize everything because that's what this one was. Yep. So I'm just going to say A and then add, then B, add. Okay. So I'm going to do that for a second here. So give me 1 second. And the idea again is on this one, on this one here is to be able to go ahead and try to find one that it's going to actually affect it. So I'm going to do that for a second here, and then I'm going to pause the video for a moment. All right, so I went ahead and added all the different letters here of the alphabet into our little payload list. And down here on the bottom, I always do this uncheck on this in case I specifically need URL encoded. And then at the very top, I'm going to click Start Attack. And on the free version, it's always going to pop this up saying it's going to be super slow. Go ahead and get the paid version, which is fairly inexpensive. In my real life work that I do for web app stuff, they bought it for me. It's $400 a year, and it's well worth it. If you're doing web application pen testing, this is the tool. This is all I need at my workplace to do my job for web app pen testing. So great tool. All right, so it's running, and you can see down here the progress below. And what it's doing essentially is, like I said, it's inserting those letters into the user agent field, and I'll show you that in just 1 second. And one more to go. Bing. All right, it's done. So if we click on one of them, you'll see here that it's automatically inserting the A in the user agent field. Here you can see, here you can see it's inserting the B, so on and so forth, okay? So it did that for me automated. Now what we want to see is over here on the right, the length, because if everything's as normal, then it'll be the same number right here. However, the C has an odd byte length. And let's scroll down. And this one here, the R, has a weird byte length. Now, we already know Agent R is right here. We already know that's a legit one for it. So we know that's valid. So is there any other ones? Nope. So the rest of them are all 409s except for C. So let's take a look at that and look at the response. So you can click on the response tab on the bottom and see what's different about it. So you do user agent, use your own code name as user agent to access a site. Announcement doesn't look like as much different. Let's see. Oh, it's doing a 302 redirect. Okay, here we go. So when it does this status right here, okay, in an HTTP, you have different status messages that will be for the request and the responses. Excuse me. And in this case here, like 100 would be informational. 200 is typically to say, yes, you get to the page successfully. 300s are typically going to be a redirect. 400 are going to be a client-side error. And 500 will be, and by the way, I mean this in any part of the range of these numbers, like 404, 403, they're still wrapped under that client-side error. The 500s would be a server-side error. So in this case, the 302 redirect is saying, all right, you're trying to get to this page, but we're going to redirect you to a different one. And to know where to redirect you, the actual browser has to put another header in there called location. And location in this case tells or points me to Agent C attention.php. So that's odd because all the other ones don't have any of that, right? They're all 200 OKs. So that tells me this is an actual path on that web page. So let's go take a look at it by browsing directly to it. So I'm going to copy that, and we're going to pop up over here, and let's go ahead and add this to the end of this. Paste and go. Whoops, what happened? Let me go back real quick here. I'll just do, make sure that's correct. Oops, I just forgot my slash there. All right. All right, so we got something new here. So now we have a guy's name, Chris, so that's good. Do you still remember our deal? Please tell Agent J. All right, so we have some username with the first letter J. We have a username more than likely with a guy named Chris. About this stuff ASAP, please change your password. It's weak. Oh, cool. So if that's the case, then more than likely we can probably brute force this password. And I can see that Chris is a user. And if we come back to our output for Nmap, we can see that there's an FTP server and there's also an SSH server. Now it's probably highly likely that the Chris one would not be for the SSH one, right? They probably wouldn't make it that easy on the challenge. So let's try going to FTP. Now what we're going to do is use another tool called Hydra. Hydra is a good password cracking tool where you can go ahead and brute force protocols like this. So FTP, SSH, those sort of things. And it will basically, based on what you give it for a username and a password or a list of either one, it will go ahead and try multiple times to blast that service at that IP address with that until it lets you in. If it lets them in, then it says, hey, here's the username and password. So it's a brute force tool. Now, in this case here, I use my sweet, awesome Dratus CE Community Edition for my methodology page. I love using this tool, especially when I do these videos, because it's so much easier. Like, for instance, when I do the steel mountain video, CTF collection video, I just have this here ready to go, so I can just grab these and copy and paste because I'm horrible at typing. I always fat finger, so this is a great way to do it. But let me explain what's going on here. So in this case, we're going to be using Hydra. So when it has the TAC lowercase l, and it is case sensitive on these switches, so the lowercase l tells me, or tells Hydra, that I know the username specifically, and I put that username in here. If I didn't know the username and I wanted to pull it from a list or try a list of usernames, it would be a TAC capital L, right? In this case here, the same thing goes for the password. I don't know the actual password, so I'm grabbing a word list that's built in with Kali called rocku.txt, and I'm using a capital P. If I knew the password that I wanted to try, I would use a lowercase p in this case here. The TAC T is for threads, how many threads I want for doing this, so that I can try to do it as quick as I possibly can. With the free version of Hydra, it is throttled a bit for the speed. So if you are using this on a professional basis, you may consider getting more of the higher end ones. But in this case, we're using 6 threads, and I'm specifically attacking the FTP server at the IP address of the challenge page. Okay, so that's the idea here. So let's grab that real quick and pop that in. And we'll post it right there. All right, so that's going to take a few minutes probably to go ahead and go through. So what I'm going to do is pause the video for a moment, and we'll come back when we have popped this bad boy. All right, so it looks like we are back with it. Yes, so that took a little bit of time, but back in business here. So we see here that the login was Chris, obviously, and then the password was Crystal. Now, I forgot something to talk about here because I try to gear this video series toward beginners in this field, in security. So what I like to do on these videos here is explain, like I did, what the switches are for and stuff like that, because I see too many what they call skitties, script kiddies, where they just kind of grab something on YouTube, a command, and just blast, and they have no rhyme or reason, no methodology. They don't really understand what's going on, you know, what a particular switch does and why it does it that way and things like that. So I always try to make sure and impress on the audience that you should always look up in the manual pages what these are for, what these switches are for. Don't just take someone's, you know, copy and paste somebody's command for a particular hack that they're doing, or if you're looking at a walkthrough or something, and blast it, because you don't know really what it does. The idea here is like you can do what they call man if you're using Linux in this case here, and Hydra was the tool. So I say Hydra like that, and it will basically tell you the things I just told you a minute ago about what I'm trying to do with this. So if you scroll down through it, it will basically tell you what they are. For instance, the TAC lowercase l is if I know the login name, TAC capital L if I had a login name file, so on and so forth. So it's always good to go down through those, and we're going to try to keep doing those as we go through. Sometimes I forget about it, but I want to make sure I do that so that you don't turn into a skitty. We want you to be competent at what you're doing and understand what's going on in the methodology behind it. All right, so we have a password for Crystal here, and it looks like for FTP. So let's go ahead and FTP into it. So to do that, you type in FTP, and then you give the name of the actual address. Where is it at? Here it is. Which, by the way, I forgot when I ran the initial command. I was like, why is it taking so long? Well, I had the wrong IP address, so that's why. All right, so let's FTP into that. Oops. Get rid of that. All right, there we go. Now it's going to ask for the name. Username we know is Chris, and then the password is Crystal. Awesome. So now we're in. For FTP, you can use some basic commands like you would normally for Linux, like ls, to list the directories of what's here. All right, so we see 3 files. Let's see, we got a text file, we got a JPEG, and a PNG. So likely there may be some steganography involved in this as well. So what we're going to do is we're going to get all of those down here to my own local machine. So I'm going to say get, and then we'll go with the first one, which in this case is toAgent. It looks like it doesn't do the tab complete, unfortunately. I don't know why. So we'll grab that first one. Awesome. And that went ahead and downloaded whatever that was from the FTP server. And we'll do the same thing for this one here. Wow, I don't know why it does not do that. So q-alien.jpg. And then lastly, we'll grab the qt.png. Awesome. So now that we've done that, we really don't need anything more in here. So let's exit out of FTP. And we can ls and c. We should actually put these in a folder, but yeah, don't worry about it. So there it is, toAgent J. So we're going to go ahead and use a command called cat. Cat allows me in Linux to be able to display what's in a text file here on the screen instead of open up a text editor. So I'm going to say cat to agentj.txt. Let's see what's going on here. All these alien photos, or I'm sorry, alien-like photos are fake. Agent R stored the real picture inside your directory. Your login password is somehow stored in the fake picture, which leads to what they call steganography. It shouldn't be a problem for you. So we have a couple tools in mind that we can use now, knowing this information. Is we have the EXIF tool, which allows me to look at metadata in a picture and see if there's anything there, like the password. We also have a tool called Steghide, which if it's something inside the picture, I can do an extract of that. We also have Binwalk is another good tool to use because it will actually look inside something to see if maybe there's a zip file in the picture, right? those sort of things. So in that case, let's start tackling some of these. So we'll start with the, let's see, what do we have? Qt.png. So let's do an exif tool. And if you don't have any of these installed on your machine, because I don't believe exif tool comes by default on Kali, you can do an apt install exif tool. So we'll say exif tool qt.png. And do we see anything interesting? Let's see. No, nothing. Okay, so nothing really there. What's the other one called? Cute Alien or something? So let's do that. Exif tool. And I was thinking it was called cute-alien.jpg. All right, so we don't really see anything interesting there. So let's now use Binwalk. Binwalk will let me know if there's something inside other than just what it is. By the way, if you want to find out what exactly a file is that you're looking at, you can use the word in Linux. You can use the keyword file. So I can say file qt.png, and it tells me it's a PNG. That's because there's something they call magic numbers at the very beginning of the file, which point it to telling it, I think it's the first 8 characters or 8 bits, if you will, that tell it it's a PNG based off of a certain number. So we know that. Nothing out of the ordinary there. So how about the cute-alien JPEG? Okay, so it's a JPEG. So Binwalk will go a little bit beyond this and see if there really is something in there. So we'll say Binwalk, and let's try the Qt one. So qt.png. Aha, look at that. So here we can see there's actually a zip archive in there called toagentr.txt. Interesting. So we can use Binwalk, and I'm going to use the help file so we can kind of explain what's going on here. I'm going to use the extract portion of it. So if you look up here, you can see TAC E is for extract. So automatically extract known file types, in this case being the zip file. Okay, so we'll go ahead and grab that. So we'll say Binwalk TAC E qt.png. Awesome. All right, so it's called toagentr.txt. And let's see if we can find that here. Right here. So you'll notice that when you use Binwalk, you're probably looking all over the root folder saying, hey, where is it? I don't see it. It's in a folder. They extract it into a folder that starts with an underscore and then whatever the name of it is. So that's where you have to look for that. So we're going to CD over to that directory. And there we go. All right, so we see this one here. Now, I think this is the same thing. Let's copy that and read it. And let's see if it's the same thing. Okay, there's nothing there. So that tells me the zip file has something to do with it here. So what we could do, since we extracted that, I guess we can just try to unzip it and see what happens. So we'll say unzip 8702.zip. Did it do it? Skip into Agent R. Whoops. Fat fingered again. This is why I use that tool, Dradus. Okay, still nothing there. I suppose we could try to use Steghide to do the extract, and let me think here. Let's try that. I forgot the command full line, so let me grab it out of here. So no, actually, let's use John instead. So I had done this one originally because I found that this was in a different location than I thought. So what we're going to use in this case here is to try to get what's in the zip file, because obviously it's not giving me anything. More than likely, it's probably password protected, I would think, more than likely, to be able to do that. We're going to grab this tool here, and John the Ripper is a well-known tool for, what do you call it, for password cracking. And before I do that, just because there's so many things in here, I am going to make a directory, and we'll just pop it in there. Whoops, what am I doing? Let's try it again. From the root directory, I'm going to say, just give it a test directory, and then CD over to it for all these different things that we're doing. All right, so in this particular case here, I am going to copy this one over from this location here. So I'll say CP, and I'm going to grab that to, let's see, 8702.zip. So the CP in this case is telling me to copy from a location to a location, and to copy it to this location, I can just do a dot like that. Okay, so there's a space and then a dot. And let's see, there isn't intro. Oh, you know what? I didn't do the absolute path. This is a good time to explain root and absolute paths and relative paths. So when I'm here in this directory of root, like this, you'll see there's a few different folders in here. If I wanted to navigate to the test folder, which is the one I just made, I don't have to put /root/test. I can just say cd to test. Now, if I wanted to cd to, I don't know, videos, okay, I couldn't do that by doing cd videos from here because it's actually not in this path, right? It's not, I don't know why I keep hitting that. It's not actually in this path. There's nothing here, okay? So I would have to do an absolute path of cd/root/videos, okay? And that would put me in that, okay? So in this case here, to get back to test, I would say /root/test. Now to copy from that one location, I had to remember it's in /root/ and then that directory here. Okay, so this is what we're doing. Here is a absolute path. Okay, a lot of good things we're learning today. All right, so that was called 8702.zip, right? And I forgot to put my destination, which is here. Dot. All right, bing, there it is. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to use the actual John the Ripper tool to take the zip file, make it into a format that John the Ripper can crack, and then from there we'll use John the Ripper to crack it as far as the password needed to extract it. And then we'll probably use maybe, I don't know, Steghide or something like that. But let's go ahead and do this particular command here so I can speed it up a little bit. So what I'm doing here is I'm saying go ahead to this directory where this particular executable is, and I want this zip file to be turned into, and that's where the bracket comes, it says output it into this file. So I'm making a file called 8702.hash from this process. So let's grab that, copy that, and put it right there. Okay, so in this case, if we do an ls, we can see it's there. Now we're going to use John the Ripper, and I'll just go ahead, copy and paste to speed things up, but explain what I'm doing. So John the Ripper, you start out with the word John, and then tac word list would be where do you actually grab the word list that you're using for cracking this particular one with a brute force. In this case, we're going to use our rocku.txt. You see we use that quite a bit for these sort of things. And then there you have to actually give the file that you're trying to crack, in this case being the one we just made. So let's go ahead and do that. And loaded one password hash. In this case, do I have it? Yes, I have it there. And so that should be John tac show. Oops. John tac show and 8702.hash. Awesome. So right here we can see it's kind of hard to read the output in this case here, but we're seeing that the actual password here that's protecting it is the word alien. It's a little difficult output to read, but this was done previously, so it was already stored in something they call john.pot. So before doing this exercise, I probably should have gone in there and cleared it out, but that's okay. But if you did it that way, if you've already cracked something previously, you can always do a John tac show and then the name of the file that was cracked, in this case because there was a password hash. So this one here is telling me that this zip file here, this is the actual password. So I use 7-zip for a lot of my stuff for unzipping. So here we can just do a 7z and then show you the command for that. So the tacx would be for doing extract. And to know that, again, you would say tac H, excuse me. And then if you scroll up, you'll find right here, X is to extract files with full paths, okay? So we're gonna do that, tac X, or actually just X, there is no tac on this one. And then the zip file that we had, and the password in this case is alien. Hit enter. Awesome. So it should have decompressed. There it is. So now we have this new 2agentr.txt. You'll recall the previous one, there was nothing in it. So let's see what we have now. Aha! Agent C, we need to send the picture to QXJ blah, 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 as soon as possible. So it's likely, and there's a variety of possibilities of what this is. We know it's not like an MD5 or a SHA hash because of the length. The first one I usually would try would be a base 64 for this to see if it's actually that. So what you can do is this. You can say echo, and then you can pop that bad boy in there, and then you can do a pipe symbol, and I'll talk about this in a second. Base 64 tac D. So what I'm trying to do in this particular case here is, and did it work? Did it do it? Okay. Oh, there it is. I'm sorry. I couldn't see it. there it is. I was trying to look for the output. In this case, what I'm doing is I'm saying echo means to replay whatever I'm typing in between those quotations onto the screen. But what I'm doing is I'm saying take the output of that, which in other words is the phrase that we see, and pipe it. Put it as input to whatever I put next. That's what the pipe symbol is for. It's saying take output from the previous command and use it as input for the next command. And the next command that I put in here was the base 64-D, which is for decode. And what it did was give me the decoded version of what that is, which is area 51. My guess is, because all of these things having to do with the different pictures, they're saying my SSH password, I think, is stored in there somewhere, that this is either my SSH password or it's in the other file, which was cute-alien something or other. And to get into that, it's more than likely this is the password for that. So let's try that with Steghide, because there was that other tool, that other JPEG. So I'm going to go ahead and CD back to root, because I think that's where the other one is. Doggone it, man. Why? I keep fat fingering. Right here, cute-alien.jpg. Right? So in this case, what we're going to do is we're going to use Steghide to be able to grab that. And we're going to use extract and then tac sf cute-alien.jpg. So let me show you again so we don't have script kiddie status here. Steghide, tac h for help or man page. Steghide. Doggone it with my fat fingers, I tell you what. All right, let's see here. So extract, there it is, right there. So we know extract is what we need to use. It can be that or tac extract. And the other one that I had in there was called SF, and that just specifies that it's a steg file, okay? In this particular case, if there needs a password, which probably it does, then we know what it is. You hit Q to quit, by the way, out of man page. I don't know if I told you that. All right, so we're going to go ahead and paste this bad boy on in here. And it does ask for a passphrase. And we know Area 51 was what we found. Sweet, look at that. So it actually did extract something called message.txt, it says. You can see right there. So yeah, let's go ahead and cat that, see what's going on. All right, so now we have the name James. Remember before we saw Agent J? There is our username that we were thinking about, was started with a J more than likely. Glad you find this message. Your login password is hacker rules ! Don't ask me why the password looks cheesy. Ask Agent R who set this password for you, your buddy Chris. Okay, so likely James' SSH password is this, right? So let's try that. So we'll say SSH and then James. Okay, when you use SSH, it's similar to the old school way of doing telnet, where you're doing a direct connection command line to another terminal, to another server. But with telnet, everything was unencrypted. Everything was sent over the line as, you know, plain text. So with SSH, it adds encryption to it, so we can still do terminal access to another machine, which is what we're going to do here. So the syntax is SSH, the username, the @ symbol, and then the IP address of the server that is running SSH, which we know in this case is this IP address. And then it may ask you if you accept the fingerprint. In this case, I'll say yes, and it's just for putting it in authorized keys file. Now it's going to ask for the password. In this case, we now know it's hacker rules with an exclamation point. And booyah! There we go. So now we are in as James at Agent Sudo. First thing you usually do is type ID to find out who we broke in as, so we can kind of get an idea of their privileges. So anything that's above 1,000 UID is typically your standard user. Not typically, it is your standard user. If it was 0, that would mean I broke in as a guy that has root access. That would be sweet. So we see, though, down here that he does have sudo privileges. So in this case, the user was created by a root user and given some privileges to run as root. Now, if it just says all, that means it can run any command as sudo, as if they were root. But then a lot of times what they'll do is they'll kind of give you a list of only things that you're allowed to run as sudo. Like you may only be able to run cat command as sudo or something to that effect. So to find out what his actual privileges are, you would type in sudo tac-l, and then you put in the password for this guy. So hacker rules. All right, so here is something interesting that we don't typically see. And this is where you would be able to see where that person can run whatever as root. But in this case, it does say that I can run bin bash, but not as root. That's strange. And the exclamation point here before that means you can't run it. It's a not symbol, essentially. So that's kind of an interesting thing. So I've never really quite seen that before. So when you're in doubt, it's always a good idea to just kind of Google to see what the heck is that? Has that been done before? Is there some sort of exploitation for that sort of setting? So let's do a paste of that. All right, check it out. Look at this. Oh, there we go. So it looks like we do have a security bypass at ExploitDB. Now I do want to make one note on this. Whenever you're looking for exploits, public exploits, it's always a good idea to stick with ones or websites that are known to be reputable and known to test the code. And the reason I say that is because there's no honor amongst thieves, and some of the bad guys will make an actual exploit, but it will actually be the exploit of backdooring you, right? So you're the hacker, you're trying to use this guy's exploit, you just copy and paste or download the exploit without reading through the code to see what it does, and you just run it. It actually, this has been done before, it actually is setting up a backdoor connection back to the person that made the exploit. So with sites like ExploitDB, they typically have a teams that will actually go through and read through the codes and stuff and verify that whatever they post on their site is not something that's an actual exploitable code other than what the actual exploit is supposed to be for. So in that case, just keep that in mind. ExploitDB is one of the most well-known, I would say, that people mostly use. All right, so we see we have a security bypass for this particular version of sudo, which means they probably patched it by now. All right, so it says check for sudo privileges. We did that, and the user may have this, which they do. So the user can't run bin bash as root. User hacker sudo privileges and ECCouncil. Yep. User privilege specification, hacker all, blah, blah, blah. With all specified, user can run. Yeah, we get all that. Okay, here's the exploit. So the exploit is to run sudo tacu #-1/bin bash. And so we don't fall in the script kiddie status. Let's see what that's all about. So we're going to pop over here and we're going to man sudo and see exactly what is going on with all that nonsense. So we have attack u. So let's go down through here and see what we can see. Okay, so it's not TAC capital U, which would be user, but it is this one right here, small case u. Run the command as a user other than the default target user, usually root. Interesting, because we can run bin bash, which gives us our shell. And once we get that shell, hopefully we'll have root access. That's the idea behind what we're trying to do. The user may be either a username or a numeric user ID. Now the -1 is the actual issue here. That was the exploit. That was the problem that needed to be patched in sudo, was that by entering a -1, you were actually able to bypass what it was asking for and actually get this bin bash as root. But what was the what was the TACU? What was the hashtag all about? So it says here that it has to be prefixed with the hashtag. All right, so that makes sense now. So when we actually look here at this, we can see, okay, sudo. So TACU we know is user. So we now know the hashtag is to prefix whatever user you put. So if I did a -1, that's the actual exploit that had to be patched for this. If I did a 0, that means I'm trying to run bin bash as root. If I did 1000, I'm running it as me. Okay, and we'll try to kind of explain it as we go. So if I come back over here and I do run that particular one, and we'll come back to this, by the way, because I do want to go over this for a second. But let me do this first real quick. So we'll go ahead and do this exploit, see if it works. Boom. Okay, so now when we ran that, we can see we're root. Nice. So that's where you would go cd/root. And then there it is. Cat root.txt and pop, another server drop. But I want to go back now. I'm going to exit out of this particular one, back to James. I do want to talk about this because this is an interesting one too. So if I did sudo, because I think as James, let me look here. Okay, I am 1000, right? And if I do cat/etsy/passwd, we do see James is 1000 and we see Chris is 1001. So what that particular command was doing is if I wanted to run bin bash as Chris, I would then do the sudo, but this time I would take out the -1 and I would say 1001. And you can see right there, it pops me in as Chris. See? Right there. Let me exit back out of that. And if I tried it then as root, I would do 0. And it says you can't allow it. You're not allowed to do it. So the sudo that we saw when we did sudo tackl, it says no, root cannot run bin bash. This is showing why. Now, there's another one too, I think, another number. Let's take a look here. I think it's like 4,000, blah, 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 something or other. Because I looked this up because there was another number that wasn't -1. What was it? Let me see here. I'm trying to remember which one it was. This one right here. So this is the other one. That was the exploit that they had to patch. So it was either -1 or it was this number. So if we actually take a look here, let me close this out. So if we actually try that same thing, and instead of 0, we do that number, I then get root again. See? So it was either -1, -1 or that big long number there. Weird oddity, but it is what it is. But anyways, that's popping the box right there. A lot of cool things we learned today from this, and did some password cracking. We did a little bit of pseudo business here. Did a little looking at the exploit database. Got some root privileges, all kinds of cool stuff. So I hope you enjoyed this particular video here today, and stick around for and keep monitoring my YouTube channel for different other videos that we got going on. I also have another series called Bounty Hunter Training for bug bounty stuff, where I go over some web application specific things. So if you're interested, check that out as well. And don't forget to subscribe and hit the notification bell and get all the different ones that you want from the Shikata channel. Until then, keep popping, baby.